got a message on the video I did a little while ago about We Choose the Bear, the whole We Choose the Bear thing. If you haven't watched that video, it's called Thoughts on We Choose the Bear. Just go watch that so I don't have to do a lot of summary. But anyway, before I go on, I should say I've actually, in that video, I asked various women their thoughts on whether or not they would choose the man or the bear. And the majority of them chose the bear. And so I've actually asked a few more women since then. One of them chose the man. And then the other three I asked all chose the bear. And funnily enough, one woman did. The most recent woman I asked, she said, oh, I would choose the bear. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, if I'm walking in the woods, I'd like to see some wildlife while I'm, walking through, I'm going through the state park or whatever it is. And she didn't. And then she said, why? It's like, so she didn't. She chose the bear, but she didn't connect it to the reason that other women are choosing the bear. And she was a woman in her early 30s. But as as is often the case, I finally got this comment, which I deleted and blocked because I was getting ready to just respond to the whole thing. It's one of these massive walls of text, and decided not to, and it's just better to not engage with people like that. But it was someone who had basically misinterpreted everything that I said, every single thing I said, and failed to grasp anything that I said. And one of the things that stood out in my mind, and I'll correct this now if it wasn't clear, no one else has expressed this concern, but this person accused me of mocking traumatized women with irritable bowel syndrome. So in the original video, what I made reference to purple-haired women with IBS, and what I was talking about, IBS there, I think everybody else picked it up, was a metaphor for people who are perpetually aggrieved and outraged and always have their nose out of alignment about something, and everything nose out of joint or whatever about something. And it was not literally talking so she put the word traumatized in there. No, we're not literally saying that. But it was so interesting. It was so bizarre, really. I don't want to say interesting, but bizarre, because this person went on to just kept on accusing me of things I'd never actually said in the video, like thinking things that I'd never expressed in the video, opinions that I didn't have. And as I was reading on, I started to kind of realize, oh, this person thinks she's speaking. This is one of these people who gets in that monothink mindset where they assume that every man is thinking exactly the same way all the time. They know what all men are thinking all the time and everything. And so as I was reading this, it was funny. She kept saying, why do you think that women being nice to men is going to help? Women have been nice to men for thousands of years and it hasn't helped anything. And I was like, again, I never said that. And this is like, and then again, I realized she's just accusing me of kind of the things she assumes that all men think, basically. And as I read on, one of the things that stood out to me was she kept wanting to know when I was going to start telling other men to, why was I not out there when was I and other men like me going to go out and start educating other men on not being a threat to women, etc., and not scaring women with their very presence and all of this. And what's so interesting to me is she actually, I addressed that, and she missed it completely in the original video, which was that I talked about how, one of the reasons we have these codes of honor and chivalry and codes of, religious codes of behavior like in Christianity and that sort of thing, is to get men and people in general to confront the fact that they have the capacity for evil in their nature, and not to be in denial about it, and not to be in denial about it, and not to hide from it, and so on and so forth. And it's one of those things where there's this mindset where people somehow think that the whatever group they're standing in opposition to, if it's men or white people or whatever demographic they're opposed to, they seem to think that like that group is the Borg, like they have monothink and they all just shut down. They all hold the same opinion and can all shut down the same opinion voluntarily in mass if they all agree to it or something. And it doesn't work like that. It's kind of like Andrea Dworkin famously wrote an essay called "I Want a 24-Hour Truce During Which There Is No Rape," and just contained in that title alone is so many bizarre assumptions about what about the way that men and women fundamentally interact with each other. The number of first of all, you can't declare a truce during which there is no rape, because this is not a the occurrence of rape is not happening as a result of as a result of a command from a governing body that could call it off. You can't do that. You can't cause all people to do, all men or any members of all group to stop a particular behavior all at once, even for 24 hours in mass. At the very most, you could have a small handful of people that agree to do that kind of thing. Additionally, most men, the majority of the men in the world, are not rapists, and it goes on from there. But it's that same attitude, like it's when you say it's not possible to have a 24-hour truce during which there is no rape, they assume that you are complicit in wanting rape to continue. It's like, no, I would be very happy if rape never occurred. One rape is too many rapes, but it's not we can't switch off evil for 24 hours. That's not humanly possible. We can't do that. It's not possible. And then of course, I don't want to get into that. I could go on all night with the problems contained in that statement, but you get the idea. But anyway, the person, the woman, I have to think this is a woman I'm talking to based on the way it was phrased, but she ended with this thing mentioning this other video about a man who explains why men rape and how he wants all men to do better and that sort of thing. And she said, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And I started to watch the video, and I heard three arguments immediately that were so ridiculous I eventually just stopped altogether, and I'm not going to get into it. The first argument was this guy, I don't know who this guy is, but he was this guy that's being interviewed, apparently explaining how all men think. And he said, first he explained that the reason all men are intimidated by women, and the reason, he said, is that men's penises are small and shriveled and embarrassing looking at all times except when they're erect during the sex act, and for this reason they resent women who can use their genitalia to grow new life. And it's one of those things, again, it's like I hear that and it's like, yeah, I know I don't think that way. In fact, I cannot tell you how, and I don't mean to sound sexist or disrespectful when I say this, but just the thought of having human life growing inside my body is so utterly horrifying that I'm actually deeply grateful that the coin toss on that didn't come up female for me. Like that is just to me, just the thought of that is just awful. Not on a visceral, physical level. It's something akin to like the Alien movies or something like that. And so it's just a very off-putting. So no, I don't envy them. If anything, they have my sympathy for having to go through that. But anyway, this apparently is, he says, is why all men hate all women, because women, as he explained it, are fully human, and men are not fully human. They're inferior, kind of subhuman creatures, and he's just pontificating all this shit. And what's amazing is right at the beginning he says that there's no actual scientific body of knowledge to support this, and then proceeds to like, okay, well, Hitchens' law, that which can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. But anyway, then the woman that's interviewing him said something that really blew my mind. She said that one time when she was at work, there was a man who took out his genitalia and exposed it to her, where she had to look up and see it. And she said, women in the workplace have to deal with microaggressions like that all day. Lady, that is not a microaggression. That is a full-on sex crime. A microaggression is somebody calls you baby in passing or sweetie in passing or something like that. It's not exhibitionism is a sex crime. That is a full-on sex crime. That's not just a matter for your boss. Or for HR. That's a matter for law enforcement. And what's amazing is if when you say it in that context, you run the risk of. And she said this is the kind of microaggression she had to put up with every day. It's like, well, first of all, again, that should never have happened, and that was completely awful and wrong, but I seriously don't think men were showing you their junk every day. I don't know if that's what she was trying to imply, but when you say it like that, what you are communicating to young women who are listening to you to try to learn how to interpret the world, what you're saying to them is that a man exposing himself like that is a mundane daily occurrence, a microaggression, and not a sex crime. That should be fired from your job. That should be facing charges for that. I mean, that's potentially facing charges for that. That is, I mean, the idea that you would write that off as a microaggression is insane. And I want to say, by the way, she went on to say that, women put up with abuse like that because they need the job and they put up with that kind of behavior. I have to say, it's not just women. A few years ago, I had a harassing boss. I had a boss that harassed me constantly. And I wish again, it was the same thing. Yeah, I needed the job, and it was work that I enjoyed. And when he found out, I expressed to him in confidence that I was on the spectrum. And once he knew I was on the spectrum, the kind of asshole fraternity boy douchebag person that he is really manifested in a toxic way. And he started harassing me. And workplace harassment is a all across the board male and female phenomenon. Men can be perpetrators of it and victims of it. Women can be perpetrators of it and victims of it. They can do it to the opposite sex or the same sex. It is not limited to any one thing or any one group. Anyway, then the third thing, the next thing, went back to the guy, this was the third thing I heard. He said, right now we have this professor named Jordan Peterson who is saying that women should be slaves, and they want to be slaves, and they want to be enslaved by men and dominated and beaten by men and mistreated by men, and that this is what men are supposed to do, all that. And I thought, okay, I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and I've never heard anything like that. I mean, the problem, part of the problem, I think, with the way, I mean, if he actually did, first of all, if he ever actually literally said anything like that, it would be blasted all over the news, just like everything that he says gets, that's misinterpreted gets blasted all over the news. But if he had ever literally said anything like that, it would be all over everywhere. It would be the only thing you ever heard about. So this guy either outright lying or making some wild misinterpretation about it. But, that said, Jordan Peterson does have somewhat conservative, socially conservative views about the role of men and women within the family. And the problem is, with the way things are skewed right now, you've got people on the left who acknowledge no middle. They don't acknowledge any middle ground. They want everything to be a war between Karl Marx and Benito Mussolini, with no acknowledgement that there are the moderately conservative Hank Hill type people who might have some traditional views, but they're certainly not out to hurt anybody or mistreat anybody, and they just might seem a little backwards every now and then. That has been lost, sadly, tragically. And I actually think when they're rebooting King of the Hill, and I actually feel like when it comes back, Hank Hill is probably going to be wildly castigated by the current Gen Z as being some kind of monster or something. But anyway, so at that point I stopped watching. There is just no, back in the old days of my YouTube channel when I was into doing ownage videos and things like that, and just, really making people look ridiculous for their bad ideas. A video like that might have been very fertile ground, but there's really no reason to engage with something that asinine and that intellectually dishonest at that point. Anyway, so I stopped watching, but I came back around to the thing. It got me thinking about the "We Choose the Bear" thing again. And if you watch the original video, you'll know that I actually informally, just asked a number of different, about a dozen or so women that I know, what they would choose if they would choose the bear, the man or the bear. Most of them chose the bear, some of them chose the man. And I was curious to hear what they think. And it's so funny to me because I sat there and listened to what individual women had to say to get an idea of what they were talking about. And what I said, I talked about, I didn't talk to the purple-haired IBS havers because I already know that that specific, the wildly politically radical demographic like that is just going to give me answers like what this person had. I want to hear what someone that's not ideologically possessed is going to say. But anyway, so I was interested to hear what they had to say and actually listen to them. And I actually got some comments. One stands out in my mind from someone who said, "I like that you actually took the time to listen to why women did that and would do that." And it's like, yeah, I wanted to actually be open-minded enough to actually listen and see what was going to be said and see why they were choosing the bear. And anyway, but I thought about that, and I thought about the question a little more, and I thought about that in light of this person who is demanding that I go and start counseling men on how to treat women properly. And all of that, and of course, first of all, you don't know me and you don't know what I have or have not done in my life. And I certainly, and the other thing is, as I was turning off the video that I mentioned, the guy was starting to talk about why men think they have permission to beat women. And again, that's, that is not a widely held belief. I don't have that belief. And these people that want me to cop to having beliefs I know I don't have can go fuck off. And that's the end of it. Yeah, you can call me fragile if you want, but I'm not going to pretend to have beliefs that I don't actually have so that you can feel put upon by the world. But anyway, but I was thinking about the question itself, and in asking the question, you've created a very specific situation that lends itself to getting that desire, getting the presumed answer of choosing the bear. And the thing is, what you've done by putting it out in the woods is you've separated people from the edifice of society. And that's where I talked about, that people abide by the social contract and that sort of thing. You're putting it in a situation where somebody might potentially suspend the social contract. I was, once in a blue moon, I will see a man outright hit on a woman. A few weeks ago, I was leaving a concert that I had attended, and as I was searching for my car in the parking lot, I found a man walked up, a young man, probably college age, walked up to a woman about the same age, and literally just said, "Hey, excuse me, I saw you. You thought you're beautiful. I wanted to introduce myself and just see if you wanted to get coffee sometime." And she said, "Oh, well, I have a boyfriend, but thank you, for the." And I already know I'm supposed to realize that she probably didn't have a boyfriend and she was just saying that so he would go away. I get it. But anyway, I saw that happen. But at the same time, I was at the grocery store today, never saw anybody hit on anybody. Never saw any, didn't even see anybody approach somebody for a conversation or introducing themselves to somebody, something like that. And that's my common experience. And I bring that up because I think you realize that even if you're a woman, even if you're a beautiful woman, most men that you interact with throughout the day don't hit on you. Well, I'm sure that one or two do, and that gets on your nerves, and that kind of colors your feeling about the entire day. But the majority of men don't hit on you. They don't, and they certainly don't attach themselves to you and never let go and that sort of thing. Uh, and I bring this up because the "we chose the bear" question puts it in that situation where someone might suspend the social contract. See, using the grocery store, as I mentioned, like just the grocery store, most men's behavior would be mediated by the fact that, one, they're not there to pick up women, they're there to do their shopping. Two, they're in a situation where there is an expectation of decorum. They know they are in a place that they do not fundamentally have the right to be. They are there. They are there at the permission of the store owner, and that permission can be revoked. Two, they know that there's all kinds of store staff and cameras up everywhere, and they may not even be consciously thinking of these things, but these are all the factors in this social engagement or the social arrangement that is the grocery store that influence people's behavior. Our behavior is all influenced that way. And what's interesting is there's this idea that all men think they have some kind of entitlement to women all the time or something like that. And just from me being a man and being men and knowing obviously tons of men that I interact with and everything, very much the opposite is true. And if you look at the social structure of society, the way society is structured, we know that the opposite is true. Because most of our inner social programming will tell us, we learn from a very early age, keep your hands in your pockets, use your inside voice, don't make a scene, don't draw attention to yourself. All of those things like that, those things we learn to function in society, those parameters become very deeply ingrained, and it's not easy to violate them. It's not easy to step outside of them. That's why when they teach things about like salesmanship techniques and public speaking and all, the greatest fear in the world is for most people greater than the fear of death is the fear of public speaking. One of the greatest fears in the world, I should say, greater than the fear of death, is the fear of public speaking. And being put on the spot and drawing attention to yourself like that mediates most people's behavior tremendously. And I think the person posing the question would know that because they're creating a situation where the man in question does not have to take those factors into consideration. You're asking the person, would you rather encounter a bear or a man who has been set free of the who has been, in theory, set free of the social parameters that govern day-to-day behavior? And there is a Lord of the Flies element to that. There's an element of when we take away, pardon me, when we take away the social contract, we take away the governing principles of society. When we take those principles away, people can revert to almost feral state very quickly. Marina Abramovich famously demonstrated that with her performance art piece, where she just stood in a room next to a table with a sign that said, "These objects can be used on me in any way the viewer sees fit. I take full responsibility for everything up to and including my death." And very quickly, the collective delusion, the collective hysteria takes over, and people are cutting her clothes off and kissing her and trying to fuck her and all kinds of things, only to be restrained by other onlookers and that sort of thing. But yeah, her point is, when you give people that permission, they will very quickly abandon it. But those social mores are very, very strong and very powerful. And that's what I kept thinking about is after a certain point, you have to be able to have some faith in that that's not going to happen. I understand the concern about being fundamentally physically at a disadvantage from a large number of the people around you. Being in a situation where 50%, being in a situation where on average 50% of the people there or more are going to have more upper body strength than you do, are going to be much larger than you. I can empathize with that. I can get that. But it is fundamentally irrational to think that every person who has that capacity therefore poses a legitimate threat to you. That's the problem. That's why I can't. That's why there's no way for men as a whole to start counseling other men. We can guide men who are willing to listen to us in the right ways of behavior in general. We can lead by example. We can correct people when their actual behavior is out of line, or try to correct people when their actual behavior is out of line. But to fundamentally accept that there is that all men pose this existential threat is a collective guilt that just flies in the face of the very social contract that is preventing people from doing that. If you truly succeeded in convincing all men that they believed they could do whatever they want all the time, that they would face no ramifications whatsoever for doing whatever they want all the time, and that they will face no chastising or challenging behavior from other people and other men for doing that. If you actually succeeded in ingraining those beliefs, getting all men to believe those things about themselves, like this person was trying to get me to do, you would not be able to get them to sit still long enough for you to then put in the thing about how they need to start being better people. If you did that, if you actually had them all pathologically believing that, they would not care what the next thing you had to say was. If you actually succeeded in making all men be that, what you would then do, what you would have done at that point, is successfully created the very existential threat that you think exists. And that's, that's the deep and brutal irony of all of this. But thinking about that thing of stepping out of the social order, I mentioned a moment ago that's society's built around this, even with regard to relationships. What is one of the obvious go-to places that men and women go to meet each other and try to, do the dance of intimacy and everything? Clubs, nightclubs, and bars, singles bars, and that kind of thing. And why do they flock to those places? Because those places have alcohol, and alcohol lowers your inhibitions and makes you more comfortable going against the grain of going against your deeply ingrained social programming that says, don't bother anybody, keep to yourself, stay back, stay away, don't make a scene, don't draw attention to yourself. It allows you to override that. Now, obviously, that taken to extremes can go to some extremely dark places, and I don't need to explain to you what those are. But fundamentally, that's one of the reasons that people socialize around alcohol, because alcohol lowers your inhibitions and allows you to socialize better. And, I should say potentially allows you to socialize better. Obviously, there are people, again, that will have a very bad reaction to it. But that's why. And if men just really and truly believed that they could do whatever the fuck they want all the time without repercussions and had to be convinced otherwise, but if they truly believed that, none of there would be no need, there would be no reason for them to have a shot before they could go comfortably talk to people. And what all of that got me thinking about was a true story. about a man who was a college student just prior to the start of World War II. So going back close to 100 years to just prior to the start of World War II. And it's a young man named Jack who was taking the bus to college every day. And he noticed that every day on his way to school, on his way to college, there was this cute girl named Catherine. He didn't know that at the time. Her name was Catherine, that would get on the bus, and she worked at the local dime store. And so one day he worked up the courage, he worked up the nerve to go over and introduce himself to her, and sat down on the seat next to her and introduced himself. And she told him to get lost. And he said, "Don't be like that." And they started talking. And out of that discussion, out of that talking on the bus, they decided that they liked each other, and they decided that they wanted to start seeing each other, and that they wanted to get married. And out of that conversation came a 50 years long marriage, 50 plus years actually, long marriage, and 3 children, the middle of which was my dad. And I bring that up because, again, I realize that what he did there was frowned upon, that the nanosecond she told him to go away, he should have honored her wishes and gotten lost. I get that from a social perspective. But I also know that there's this thing in courtship that demands that a person go a little bit over the line. I just mean a little bit. And it takes considerable, when you're in that wild moment where you have to throw caution to the wind and try to get somebody's attention. You have to have that ability to impose yourself on them just a little bit, just enough to get them out of, again, most people, she was probably thinking, the woman who would eventually be my grandmother was probably thinking about, all kinds of other things, whatever her day had in store for her, what she needed to do at work that day or something, or what have you. And all of these things. And probably didn't want to have that conversation. But, my granddad had to kind of get her attention and say, "Hey, this might be a good thing." And I say all of that because, like, if I, by that moral, like, imagine the classic time traveler scenario. Imagine that I now believe everything that this person was trying to put forth to me, and I'm supposed to counsel men to go be, improve their behavior and everything. Imagine if I was now required to travel back in time, Back to the Future style, and tell my own grandfather that he shouldn't bother her, that she, like all women, was terrified of all men all the time, and he needed to not go talk to her, or at the very least walk away as soon as she rejected him or something like that. I would not exist, and a very happy marriage would not have happened. And so I think about that, and it's like, I get it. I understand that that people have boundaries, and that those boundaries need to be respected. I get that. But I also know that in order for courtship and dating and love and relationships to happen, someone has to be willing to say, "I'm going to step over your boundary. I'm going to make a case that you should welcome me over that boundary." And, I don't, that kind of thing. I don't know if my granddad handled that situation perfectly or well. I don't know what her response would have been if he had handled it differently, if he had tried a different tact or a different approach. I don't know. But I do know that human beings are extraordinarily multivariant, and every human being human beings are, we're not the Borg. We are not two sides in a war where one side can just declare a ceasefire and stop raping or something like that, or one side or both can declare a ceasefire. We're not that people. We're not at war with each other, and we're not supposed to be at war with each other. We're supposed to want to be together fundamentally. We are separated. We are fundamentally separated as men and women. There are these fundamental differences, but because there are these fundamental differences, we're supposed to find the ones we connect with. And to do that, we have to go against everything in our social programming that tells us not to bother people and not to be a nuisance to people. And then we have to have this other level of social savoir-faire where we can high or know when best to step back from it before it becomes a problem and that kind of thing, while still trying to kind of respectfully go over the line. You get where I'm coming from. It comes down to, it's kind of like South Park said it perfectly, and I'm going, if like that other person, you can't understand the metaphor, I'll stop and explain it to you. But the person said, there's a line in the movie Team America World Police. The South Park creators made that movie, and the line goes like this: in this world, there are dicks and there are pussies, and pussies hate dicks because dicks fuck pussies. But what pussies don't understand is that there are also assholes, and pussies can't fuck assholes, only dicks can fuck assholes. Okay, if you don't get what that means, it's saying that in this life, there are strong people whose job is to go out into the world and exude strength out into the world and take action and make a difference and all of that. And pussies, when they say pussies, they're not talking about literal vaginas. They're using that as a metaphor for weak people. There are people who are not strong. They are weak. They are not strong. And on a pathological level, they despise strong people because they view the strong as they view strong people fundamentally as trotting upon them. And the problem is, because they have been trod upon, what they don't understand is they can't understand the difference between the dicks and the assholes. That there are people out there who have that bold motive force within them, but they are not necessarily evil people. That there are assholes who are truly evil people that the pussies cannot defend themselves against. They need those strong people. And that you can very easily parlay this into an explanation of how good men have to protect women from evil men and that sort of thing. But that's the reason, fundamentally, that you have to reject something like that. Like, why are you not going to, why aren't you going to counsel men on doing, teach men, the teach men not to rape thing and things like that? Because the only men who are going to listen to that are the men who didn't pose you a threat in the first place. The assholes who don't care about things, moral lessons like that, are just going to disregard any of that. They'll laugh it off and continue to be evil. The only thing you're doing is weakening the strong. And when you weaken the strong, or you're weakening the good contingent of the strong, not the evil contingent of the strong. The evil contingent of the strong is not going to be humbled and surrender its strength out of empathy and consideration for you. And so that, and that's that thing we keep running into where somebody says, there's a meme that goes around that they'll say, well, the only thing that can protect women from bad men is a good man, and so it shows you that the problem is men. No. If we're talking about physical strength, there are bad women out there, and women can physically protect themselves from bad women by and large. It just gets ridiculous after a while. But you see what I'm trying to get at there. Trying to do those things like that only impacts the men who already pose no threat to you whatsoever. the men teaching, teaching men things like that, not to, there's the Gillette commercial that came out, the so-called woke Gillette commercial that came out a while ago, where you see a woman walking down the street and a man goes to chat her up and his friend stops him like that. In those situations, the only men that are going to be deterred from going and talking to that woman are the exact men that she would want to talk to. What you have done when you start doing that is you are not helping her. You are just limiting the men who will approach her and talk to her to the assholes that don't care about, that have no empathy, that have no compassion. You've limited it completely to that. So anyway, that's getting at the heart of the problem, and and I probably give a lot more thought to these things, these metaphors, than a lot of people do. But I understand, again, it's not lost on me why a woman would make that choice between the man and the bear in the woods in that situation. That's not lost on me. What I disagree with is the idea that it says something fundamental about how women view men, and or are always going to feel around men. And to prove my point, think about it this way. If you were walking in a grocery store, what would you rather be surrounded by? Men or wild bears?